Welcome to the Subconscious Mind Mastery Podcast. Thomas Miller, thanks for joining us. I wanted to play you something that, now I have already put this on Fun Astrology, so if you heard it there, this is the same thing. I'm going to set it up a little differently here, but the piece is the same. It's an excerpt from an audiobook that I just finished. The author is Raymond Merriman. He is a prominent astrologer, especially a financial astrologer. And he wrote a book back in the early 1970s. We're going way 50 years back here, when he was, in his late 20s when he was writing this. And it's called Evolutionary Astrology, The Soul's Journey Through States of Consciousness. It is way more a book about the soul's journey than it is about anything related to astrology. It captures how astrology points us the way of the soul's journey. And that's why I've come to love astrology so much. It's like, oh, wow, we have a map through all of this? And boy, all I can say on that is chapter 16 is a map. If I get to ever doing astrology readings again and we have one together, we will be talking about this technique that's mentioned in chapter 16. It is life-changing, revolutionary, at least as far as identifying and applying these intersections in life that, we often face, and we make a decision, and when we look back, some of us think, oh my God, why did I do that? And then yet some of the times it works out perfectly as it should. But to have the conscious awareness that one of those points is at hand and that we can be more perceptive to making the high timeline choice. If you get to a point in your path where you're always making as much of a high timeline choice as you can, then you're always going to err to the positive side. And that's what we're trying to do around here. Now, chapter 1 in this book is nothing to do with astrology, nothing to do with the sky. It's about a story, an allegory. That's the title of the chapter. What he's setting up is that we have a higher purpose for being here now. And that's the other big thing. I think when we can understand that there's a very specific reason for us to be on the planet at this time. And he uses this little allegory of going all the way back 2,000 years to when the last epic period shift took place, when Earth moved from the age of Aries into the age of Pisces. Now we are moving out of Pisces at some point. It's a big, wide line, but we are moving out of Pisces into the age of Aquarius. He uses this allegory talking about the Essenes, which was a Hebrew sect that lived out by the Dead Sea. And I've been in my own journey, in my own journal and notes and thoughts to self, I've been dissecting some things of my religious past again. And I've just come to realize one thing, that the history of that time is not precise, period. We have better parts and lesser better parts, but it is not complete. There are fragments of things that give us an idea of what happened. Yes, absolutely, there's that. There is historical documentation that is proven. The more of these documents that are found, like the Dead Sea Scrolls that pertain to this story, the more evidence we get. We can put another brick into the wall of our configuration. But just keep in mind that anything that comes from that period is pretty much a patchwork quilt. We have good pieces and we have rags, and we put it all together. And documentation about the Essenes would be more on the rags side, quite honestly. There's not much there, but there were a few things in the Dead Sea Scrolls discovered in 1947 that raised eyebrows and had people realize that there was something else going on here, particularly related to Masada. I've been to Masada. Our family went over there in 1976, and I was in high school and remember it well. And I remember that there was this magical feeling about Masada too, and I was not believing the way I do now. I wouldn't have been able to appreciate it then anyway. But there was a vibe up there on Masada. Some of you have been there, and you probably would agree. What they do know is that it was inhabited, and then the inhabitants disappeared. So they presume that the Essenes might have been that connection. The time frame on the disappearance was right there around 70 to 74 AD, And that's when Flavian Titus, who later became Emperor Flavian Titus of the Roman Empire, destroyed the Temple of Jerusalem and Jerusalem itself. I mean, he burned the city out. And that was basically when these Essenes disappeared. It's also when Masada apparently fell, that the Romans figured out how to get up to the top somehow. And there are beliefs of mass suicides where they just surrendered by suicide. But again, those are more under the speculation than proven history category. So if there were these Essenes, what do we know about them? Well, historians have put a few things together. They found some textiles, some linen clothing in the Dead Sea Scroll in Qumran in the caves that tipped them off that the residents or the people who buried those scrolls lived pretty simply for the time. Masada gives us examples of communal living. You know, a lot of people right now are feeling that they want to join together in a like-minded community. Well, that appears to be what this was too. And the other thing is, even though they adhered strictly to the laws of Moses, they apparently also had this esoteric, you can create your own reality, we live in a dualistic world, this kind of perspective. I think you could say to some degree, not full on, to some degree, they were ancient metaphysicians. They knew that there was this ability to transcend into the non-physical world to be able to create. And I think also from their Hebrew heritage that would have obviously been co-creation. Greg Braden has done some work on the Essenes. He did a series on the mirrors of the Essenes, 7 mirrors of the Essenes. In other words, things reflect back to us what really is inside of us. That's a pretty common principle now, but at one time it was not so much. Things were more reactive. Another one that he pulled from the Essenes was lost prayer technique. We've talked about these two, both in the podcasts before, but the pray rain technique, that's from the Essene, kind of what was missing and connected the dots. And then also that story about the cancer tumor that was healed, the Chinese physician team that watched it on the x-ray. He has those stories. Those are tenets of his repertoire. But basically that prayer is far more an emotion and a feeling of connection with the outcome than it is verbal requests and petitions. And that's even in the Bible related to Jesus, because in the Garden of Gethsemane, the night before his crucifixion, he sweat drops of blood as he was talking to God. I mean, that science has proven that that's possible under that kind of angst and strain. The medical term for it is hematidrosis. But in that situation, it's a description of an emotional prayer. Oh, it was accompanied with words, but the emotion was driving the prayer. Same thing in Pray Rain. Same thing in the tumor shrinking on the x-ray. So all of that can be attributed to the Essenes. And then, mystically, they disappeared. And Ray creates a beautiful story around that whole backdrop and that whole setting to bring us right into involvement, first-hand involvement in this transition into this new age, this new era, this new epoch that is now before us. And the moral of this story is, are you ready? Are you willing to be a part of the catalyst that will help this transition, woven into truly a beautiful allegory? The book will be out in November, December-ish 2025, and we'll obviously be letting you know on here how to get it. It is more about the soul's journey and how astrology helps guide us in that. But here is Chapter 1, the Allegory. Long ago, in an area extending from the Dead Sea southward through the Nile River Valley in Egypt, a community of individuals once gathered. They were highly skilled and talented individuals as far as the affairs of the world were concerned, but one day each made a commitment that not only affected the rest of their lives, but also the lives of many people for centuries to come. Each member of this community decided to give up mundane skills and talents for personal ends only, and to come together with a unified purpose in a band which has come to be known as the Essenes. The time began around 500 BC. The planet Earth was entering a critical cycle. The age of Aries was drawing to a close, and the age of Pisces was fast approaching. A change, nay, a great change, could be felt in the air. People were confused and frightened, for things which they could not understand were happening so fast. All the prophecies of old seemed to be manifesting at once, with one exception: the birth of a great Savior. "Where is our Savior?" was a cry heard across the lands. Then, one by one, the Saviors began arriving. Bodhidharma in the Far East, Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, Mahavira in India, Lao Tzu and Confucius in China, and Zoroaster in the Middle East. But the Essenes were looking for another yet, one who would appear according to the prophecies of the Old Testament, and according to the prophecies of their own wise men, known as the Magi. They knew the time was upon them to prepare for the advent of this new age, for the arrival of a great one. They knew that a new age of devotion, self-sacrifice, and love for all people was necessary for the Earth's evolution. In fact, it was necessary in order for the planet to remain in balance with the universe itself. So they made the commitment. They would band together and be the examples of the new age. They would give up their selfish pursuits and begin using their skills and talents for the good of the community which they would form. They would become love and devotion in action, and they promised to devote their lives to successfully usher in the new age and a new Savior for humankind. For a few centuries their community prospered and grew. It grew in the bond of the commitment, in the faith of a promise they made and kept to one another. And then, one day, the prophecies of the Magi came to be. The bright star, the conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn in the sign of the fish, hovered above in the evening skies. A sign, an omen long awaited, signaled not only the end of waiting and preparation, but the beginning of the great task which now lay before them. The Essenes were to be the teachers for Jesus of Nazareth. An age had come to an end, and a new age had finally arrived. The Essenes carried out the task they had chosen and had been chosen to do. They successfully ushered in a new age based upon the principles of love and devotion, largely through the teachings of one great master, Jesus of Nazareth. Within 2 centuries after the birth of Jesus, their purpose at this point completed, the Essenes vanished from the face of the earth. Nearly 2 millennia have passed. The age which the Essenes ushered in is now drawing to a close. Again, the planet Earth is in the midst of a crisis. Great changes are rapidly taking place, and a new age is fast approaching. Humankind is again in the precarious position of needing to balance itself with the natural order and flow of the universe. The process of the evolution of this planet is once more unfolding in a dramatic fashion. Once again, the call for preparation for such a change is being sounded. The Essenes made a promise to commit themselves as workers for a universe of love, peace, and harmony. They promised to work against all the forces of negativity by concentrating their efforts totally toward the creative and positive forces within the universe. And this promise was made for eternity. This book is dedicated to the Essenes, who have come once again to fulfill their promise to humankind. It begins with a you and a me. We look at one another and notice differences. You don't look like me, and I don't look like you. We don't always think alike either. In my thoughts, I form judgments about you, and you do the same about me. I define who and what you are all about by constructing forms and limits. I look at you as I look at life. You have a birth, a life of events such as marriage and children, occupations and avocations, awards, honors, setbacks, and disappointments. Like life itself, you seem to have a beginning and an end, and I function as if these things are real. But are they? Does life consist of a beginning and an end? Is reality based only upon the physical appearance of things? Or is it possible that there is something beyond the appearance, that there is something beyond the birth and death moments? I look about and I notice things. I notice that everything is in movement, however slow, and that everything changes over a period of time. In the world in which I function, nothing remains constant forever. Why do things change, I ask myself? Are these changes without a purpose? Are they aimless and coincidental? In this lifetime, I have chosen, or been chosen, to be an astrologer. I'm proud of this position. I dearly love my art, for it gives me a sense of the nature of the universe which no other intellectual endeavor has ever afforded. There is one thing in particular that I and other astrologers have discovered in my studies. There is an order to life. There is a timing function operating in the universe, one which affects every living organism. As an astrologer, I see that one's marriage, one's job, illness, even death, all seem timed in accordance with astrological cycles. Seeing correlations which occur between the celestial bodies and the events in one's life, another question arises. Is not the moment of birth itself also well-timed? Is not the birth also an event just as important as the others? Might not one's birth moment constitute a major event in a cycle which is greater than and includes this single lifetime? And I can see how I may have fallen into the fallacy of looking upon life in terms of limitations and restrictions, as if there is a birth and events and a death, and no more. But now I begin to see life a little differently. I see there is a reason, a purpose, for the moment of birth. I see that every moment has a quality to it, and that one's birth is in harmony with the quality of that moment. I see that there is something beyond the appearance, beyond the physical, beyond the quote-unquote reality, which tells me that I am different than you. I see that there is something which I will refer to as the soul of each individual. And that part of the individual, the soul, lives before the birth moment and after the death moment. I understand now that to study astrology from the point of view of just a single lifetime is like trying to understand a period in history by examining the prevailing conditions of only that time period. Conditions existed prior to the moment of each phenomenon on this plane, including the moment of one's birth. I also understand now, as an astrologer, that one earns the right to reincarnate at any given specific moment, a moment in which the quality of the universe is in harmony with the prior actions of that soul. This allegory is a dedication to the Essene souls. One might ask why the previous thoughts are brought out in reference to the Essenes. It is because of the nature of the Essene mind. The Essenes did not see life in terms of a beginning and an end. They did not see reality in terms of limitations and definitions. They did not see the self, the spirit of each individual, as alienated and apart from the rest of the universe. The Essenes made a commitment for eternity. They did not expect to fulfill this commitment in one lifetime, in the course of only 60 or 70 years. That would be a very short eternity. No, the Essenes had a sense of the soul's immortality, a sense of the everlasting relationship of each soul with the spirit of life, capital S, the spirit of the universe, capital S, the spirit of a God force which created and sustains order in the universe. At present, there is a school of thought emerging known as evolution. This school assumes all of the universe, including humankind, is in a constant state of change or evolution. It furthermore assumes that there are levels of evolution. Everyone is not on the same level. Some souls are more evolved than others, just as some species of animals are, biologically speaking, more evolved than other species. Applied to humankind, the concept of evolution helps to explain the world of phenomena, a world in which exist apparent differences between individuals. As long as we act as if we are separated and alienated from life and from one another, we are going to attract conditions which support this illusion. Each condition in life is one which we have attracted, according to what we have projected into life at some point in time, and at the same time, each condition attracted potentially becomes a lesson through which each of us might evolve. This is a universal law, present in every major religion and applicable to every condition in the phenomenal world. It is known as the law of retribution, or karma. What you sow you shall reap. As one thinketh, so he or she is. If we think of ourselves as limited and separated, then we're going to act as such. If we act as if we are limited and alienated, then we are going to attract situations which enhance this illusion. This is the nature of the physical earth plane. The earth plane, like every other sphere, is like a school. There are lessons to learn, and these come from situations we experience. The purpose of these experiences and lessons is to understand the self more deeply, to liberate the being from isolation and loneliness, and to become whole. This happens when the soul of an individual merges with spirit, capital S, which is the same spirit that created and sustains this universe. Until this point is attained, every action continues to create a reaction. Every cause continues to have an effect, and the existence of the I, as well as the not I, seems real. Each of us, because we have the energy of life, the consciousness of being, are of spirit. In this higher awareness, we are part of a universe which is in balance, in harmony. This is why every action performed has a reaction. The universe always seeks to maintain balance. That is why every soul which reincarnates must reincarnate. Its prior actions have set up conditions which must be rebalanced. And until the soul is balanced, it will reincarnate time and time again and experience various versions of the same patterns or scripts. This was a concern of the Essenes. What if a number of souls became out of balance to an extreme? What if a group of souls occupying the planet at once continued in a direction contrary and out of sync with natural order and natural law? What if the planet Earth became greatly out of balance with the rest of the universe? Would Earth, like some stars, and like the planet once existing between Mars and Jupiter, have to burn itself out or explode in order to maintain a balance in this universe? One wonders. Here we are approaching a new age, the age of Aquarius. This is to be the age of the humanitarian, of enlightenment, truth, and greater awareness. The Earth is to be making strides in higher consciousness, strides toward the realization of a true brotherhood, a planetary identity. And what do we see happening? We see violations of natural law all about us. We see innocent citizens slaughtered in wars. We see young people throughout the world murdered for expressing outwardly their beliefs and ideologies. We see dishonesty and corruption in governments and the business community. It crushes our very spirit to see man fighting against man, exploiting one another, looking for ways to take advantage of each other. And yet, we know, because of the law of retribution, that one cannot really gain at the expense of another, that a balance must and will be achieved. But we wonder how it will be achieved, given the nature of what we are supposed to be learning as we progress into the new age. Many of you listening to this book see these things happening. You know how frustrating life can seem to be at times. We are a people with a hope, a dream, an ideal. Many of us are seekers, seeking some peace, some love, some truth. From this seeking, many of us have already begun to discover. We are discovering that we are not alone, that there are others like us, compatriots of the universe, who are on the same journey. We are beginning to discover that life is not meaningless, not purposeless, and that we are not helpless. We are beginning to realize that there is a reason for being born now, into this time of great change and flux. It is the dawning of a new age. Changes are rapidly taking place. The consciousness of the people upon this earth is beginning to transform. It is no coincidence that you are here now. It was no coincidence that you were here 2,000 years ago. You made a commitment for eternity, and your time has come again.